is going to be joining us a little bit later. CB4 as well. CB5,
Todd Shapiro, Vice Chair of CB5.
thanks for being here, Todd. CB6,
Sandy McKee, Chair of CB6.
CB7,
Beverly Donahue, Chair, CB7.
CB8,
Valerie Mason, Chair of CB8.
CB9 is going to be joining us shortly. CB10,
Marquise Harrison's online, chairperson.
not sure we're able to hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Couldn't figure out if we're having any audio issues. How about now, Marquise? Okay. CB11.
Testing.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Testing.
Yes, I am the Secretary of Community Borough 11. My chair is Zoom.
CB12 is going to be joining us in just a little bit. All right. Thank you all for being here.
Oh, the internet connection is not good up here.
Folks are able to hear Mark on Zoom, and I'm just trying to see why we're not here. Apologies.
Speaker, maybe?
Let's see. Hopefully this works.
Yes.
All right, check your computer sound might be on. Computer sound. Or. All right. No, you should be good now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excuse me.
You hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. It's
Okay, sorry.
there you go.
Okay.
Thanks. All right. Can I have a motion to adopt today's agenda? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I also have a motion to adopt the January 16th Borough Board minutes?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. I would love to pass it off to the Borough President, who's joining us via Zoom to give his Borough President's report.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, Borough Board. Great to see all of you. As Eric,
Just updating the audio one more time.
no problem. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Well, good morning again, everybody. Great to see all of you. As Eric said, we have a lot on the agenda today, but I do want to take a moment first to talk about the ways in which the new administration in Washington has been impacting our borough and our city. Today marks exactly 1 month since the new administration took over in Washington. And there's been a number of ways in which our borough and our city have been targeted. First, just have such concern about how immigrant families here are facing increasing fear of apprehension. We're seeing a reduction in attendance in many schools in Manhattan from immigrant families who fear ICE detention. This is just so bad for New York City to target families here, to threaten to tear them apart, to remove the protection that we've understood was in place in schools and hospitals and houses of worship. It really has a devastating impact on so many New Yorkers, and New York City needs to stand up to protect those families. That's my strong belief. Then there's the fiscal impact. We get about $8 billion a year from the federal government for various city agencies, especially our public schools, but also the nonprofit sector here relies very heavily on federal funding. And we had this chaotic moment a couple of weeks ago where all federal funding for nonprofits was frozen. These are contracts that already been agreed to. These nonprofits have done the work in many cases and spent the money, and then were locked out of their portals where they could access the money that they've already spent, that have already been contracted for. Thankfully, a court intervened to stop this, and the Trump administration actually withdrew the plan. But I think it's just a preview of the potentially chaotic impact that the Trump administration fiscal policy could have on New York City. And then there's the news that broke yesterday, the announcement by President Trump that he is going to seek to repeal approval for congestion pricing here. And I understand this is still really controversial, probably in every one of your boards. I don't minimize that. I will note that the reduction in congestion in the central business district has been pretty dramatic. I think travel time in some of the tunnels is down 50%. But I guess I'd say wherever you stand on the policy, was enacted by New York State government. This was approved by the United States Department of Transportation after 4 years of rigorous analysis. And I think it really calls into question the principles of local control and really the process of federal approval to have this policy upended like this. It undermines our ability to issue bonds for revenue approved by the federal government when they can be upended so quickly. And again, whatever you think about the policy, if the plan is canceled, that leaves a $15 billion hole in the capital budget. This is money that would go to things like upgrading stations and adding elevators and modernizing signaling systems and more. So my personal feeling, it's pretty disturbing that the president would intervene this way. I do want to say one more thing on a congestion pricing related policy, which is that what we're fearing and actually seeing is that more suburban commuters are dumping their cars on residential streets to avoid either paying for parking garages or paying the congestion fee. And you see that really all over uptown, east side, west side, Washington Heights, Inwood. And there's an obvious solution there, which I've been advocating for years, and have a great partner in the city council on this, Carmen de la Rosa, and that is to implement residential parking permits. This is in place in many other cities in America. The idea is that for residential streets, you'd have to have they would be reserved for local residents to park there, and there could be a nominal fee attached to it that would also potentially generate revenue for things like parks in the neighborhood. To do this, we need state permission, and actually, there is a bill in Albany that now is being carried by newly elected Assemblymember Uptown, Michael Lasher. The state's already granted authority to many cities across the state to implement parking permit programs. The city of Albany itself, New Rochelle, many others. And we just want New York City to have this option so that city council could pass legislation. And then I would envision this being a neighborhood by neighborhood decision. And it's not too soon for some of you to think about whether this is the kind of program you would like in your neighborhood and maybe even to weigh in on it. I understand every neighborhood would look at this differently, but I think the beauty of a program like this is you really could go community board by community board or even smaller areas. So stay tuned on this. I think the need is greater than ever. And I sense a rising push for this. I do want to talk about some of the official business today. We are considering our fiscal year 2026 budget resolution. And I think there's some really good stuff in there. The affordability crisis is top of mind. And so there's a lot of focus on further investments in the capital budget to create more of the kind of deeply affordable housing that we so need in Manhattan. I think there's also a focus on the budget for HPD for the same reason, because there are real challenges, for example, in getting affordable housing approved quickly because of staffing shortages at HPD that we need to address in the budget. There's also a real focus on education and youth issues, childcare, certainly a number of DOE related investments that are prioritized there. And I don't want to neglect mention in this resolution and something that I strongly support, which is added budgets for community board operations. You do so much on a shoestring budget with such limited staff, and we really believe you should have increase in your budget to reflect the important work that you do. In the past week, my office has weighed in on two significant land use actions. One was in the Western Rail Yards. We issued a recommendation on Friday against approval. This is a site that had a plan in place from 2009, and the applicant was seeking to amend that plan. it would have meant loss of the potential creation of quite a significant amount of housing. And there were some other aspects of the plan that I have concerns about, including installation of an extremely large podium at the northern edge of the site, and what I fear could be some adverse impacts on the High Line, which is, of course, a very important public space adjacent to the site. And so for all those reasons, I didn't feel at this point that I could recommend approval of the plan. Obviously, it continues now to the City Council. By contrast, on Tuesday this week, I issued a recommendation for an application on 145th Street and Lenox Avenue in Community Board 10. I neglected to mention Community Board 4 was the site of the Western Rail Yard plan, and I worked very closely with them and was really grateful for their partnership on that. On CB10, the plan, this is actually round 2 of a plan that had been proposed 3 years ago. It's the site of what's currently a truck depot, some dilapidated and partially vacant single-story retail. And there's the potential to create what would be a minimum of 291 affordable units in a neighborhood that desperately needs them. But actually, there's an opportunity to more than double that to what I believe would be 591 affordable units, some at very deep affordability levels. And while the plan is still in process, of course, it goes to the City Council next. I do want to shout out CB10 and Chair Harrison for doing a lot of really good work on this. And I want to shout out Councilmember Yusuf Salam, who's been very, very engaged on this, very good partner for my office. I know he's been partnering very close with the community board and continued to work on this application. So lastly, just two quick announcements. We have community board applications in full swing right now, and the deadline is February 28th. We want every one of you and all your members, if they're up this year, please reapply. You still have time. And if you know good leaders in your communities, please have them apply as well. We've been really proud at having just really an overwhelming number of applications in each of the last 3 years. We want to do that again this year. My sense so far is there's a real outpouring of interest in local leadership in these trying times, and that's a good thing. And finally, we have our annual State of the Borough address coming up. I believe the date is going to be March 23rd at LaGuardia High School. So mark your calendars. So many of you joined us last year. It was really a great event, and we're looking to do it again this year. So again, that's March 23rd at LaGuardia High School. Hope to see all of you. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Borough.
Borough President.
You have a second for a question?
Of course.
It's not going to be about congestion pricing. Good morning,
Thank
Mark.
you. Good to see you.
I just want to say that CB8 and CB7 have already looked at permit parking in our neighborhoods. I think we came to the same result, but for different reasons. At least we didn't think it was going to work for us. But a side note, I know you talked about the implications of the federal government on what's happening in New York City. Can you comment on the situation with our mayor and now the loss of some very important heads of departments in the city and what effect that's having on, if any, on service delivery? And
look, I want to be careful not to veer into politics here,
okay.
Valerie, but I will say that I know each of the 4 deputy mayors that have announced a resignation extremely well. Deputy Mayor Torres Springer, Williams Isom, Yoshi, and Parker. And I consider them all to be extremely talented professionals, veterans of city government, good partners for me. And I would certainly lament their loss. I think it would leave a big leadership void there. And, you know, I think I'll just say without veering too much into politics, I think we need a New York City government that is totally independent. We need New York City leadership that's totally independent and that collaborates with Washington when appropriate, and that pushes back when we need to defend the interests and the people and the budget of the city. That's the kind of leadership I want to see, and if we're not getting that kind of leadership, certainly that's of enormous concern to me.
Thank you.
You got it.
Ms. Bob, hey, Mark, thanks very much. Just a related question that I learned about this morning, something called the Inability Committee. This is something
Yes.
individually can participate on. Is this something that's been convened yet, or can you give us any information? I had not heard of this before, this committee
Yes.
that review the, thanks. Yes.
Yes, this is a provision in the city charter to remove a mayor. It has not been used, and I think some of the parameters remain to be defined. What is the conditions under which it could be convened? There's some dispute among even members of the committee itself about whether it only refers to some sort of physical incapacitation, or whether it could refer to the current circumstances. The members of the committee are a deputy mayor appointed by the mayor, the head of I guess the city's corporation council, the speaker of the city council, New York City comptroller, and the borough president, who has the longest tenure. And while all 5 of the current borough presidents came in roughly at the same time, my friend and colleague Donovan Richards, borough president of Queens, actually filled out the remainder of his predecessor Melinda Katz's term when she was elected to district attorney. So he is the longest serving borough president by, I think, a year or so, and therefore he would also be a member of this committee. 4 of the 5 would have to vote to remove. But then there's the opportunity for appeal, and the mayor could appeal to the city council. And at that point, I believe 2/3 of the council would have to vote to remove. So it's a fairly lengthy process. I don't believe it's been used before, though it is outlined in the charter. And certainly there's a lot of discussion right now about whether the current circumstances to trigger it. Just repeating what's been in the news and public statements, the comptroller has expressed his belief that he thinks it may well need to be implemented, and the city council speaker has expressed her belief that it really only applies in cases of physical incapacitation, and that she does not believe the current circumstances therefore are warranted. So maybe I went into too much detail, but that's a complicated process as I understand it.
Mark, that was fantastically helpful. Thanks so much.
You got it.
Interesting times.
Thank you so much.
Very.
Thanks so much for joining us, Mark. We really
Thanks so
appreciate it.
much, everybody. Good to see all of you.
All right, with that, I'm happy to get into our public hearing and vote on discussion on the fiscal year 26 preliminary budget. I first want to check if there is anybody who is attending online that was looking to submit testimony. Please do so now. Also, can also pull up the solution while we're here. Not seeing or hearing anyone, I'll then bring it back to the group at large. I'm just going to. Then we have it up here. All right, so having nobody in the public looking to join and testify, I just want to go over a couple of maybe ground rules for how we do this. We're about to dive into this now. If anybody needs a physical copy of the reso, it's also up by Sandy, so you feel free to grab one and take a look. We're gonna go through each portion individually. At that time, I'd really appreciate if anybody has any amendments, friendly amendments that they'd like to bring up, please do so. We have our amazing team here that's gonna be taking note of all of this. So we'll be able to circulate an updated copy after this meeting. One of the things that I also like to stress is we try to keep our amendments and friendly amendments pretty broad. So certainly if we're talking about transportation, we don't want to include a line about, you know, a particular street or a particular couple of blocks because we start to get really into the weeds on things and we'll never get out of here that way. And we want to give everybody the opportunity to vote on these matters as they relate to their districts. I'll do my best to try to keep the conversation moving forward so we get out of here in a timely manner as well. So before we do that, I just want to acknowledge, thank you, Barry, for being here on behalf of CP9. Catherine's here as well. So just for our roll call. And I want to thank the team for being here and being supportive. I want to shout everyone out, but in particular, I want to welcome Stephen, who is our new policy director. Stephen, do you just want to introduce yourself or say a few words?
Happy to be here. Like Eric said, I'm Stephen Morales. I'm our new policy director. So really interested and excited to get to know all of your work and be partners together. So thank you very much.
Thanks. And again, thanks to everybody for being here. All right, so just going to start going through this here. I've already shared this out a couple of times, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to review our overview. And we'll start with our first section here, which is on housing insecurity and affordability and tenant protections. Again, I'm not sure if everyone wants me to read this out, but I know you have it. So was there anything here that folks wanted to discuss? Maybe have any amendments or additions that they wanted to bring up? Yeah.
On behalf of Tammy, who wrote her suggested amendment, paragraph 2 on housing insecurity, she asks, in lieu of that, will create affordable housing in neighborhoods that badly need it. She says, can we revise this to that? Will create affordable housing spread across all neighborhoods, particularly in areas that have experienced significant loss of affordable housing.
I don't see any issue with that. Does anybody have any questions or concerns before we look to approve
What's
that?
the second paragraph?
Yeah, so she says,
It's the
yeah, the second paragraph, last line.
yeah, so this line here, rather than having in neighborhoods that badly need it, correct?
Correct. She
Okay.
writes, we suggest to revise this to, quote, that will create affordable housing spread across all neighborhoods, particularly in areas that have experienced significant loss of affordable housing.
I like that.
Okay. Somebody wanna make a motion to approve that amendment? Second. Can we take a vote? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right, so I know the team is making notes, so we'll circulate that updated language.
Right.
Thank you.
I have a suggestion also on housing while we're still there.
Sure.
On the third paragraph, or potentially in a new fourth paragraph, adding a sentence. Additionally, we call on HPD to continue its innovative Partners in Preservation program that works with local nonprofits and neighborhoods to identify affordable housing units at risk of being illegally deregulated and protect them and the residents residing there.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns about that?
What was the agency? I couldn't hear the.
HPD,
Oh, okay.
it's their
Yeah.
Partners in Preservation
Okay. HPD.
program.
Okay.
And it's a pilot still, for medium, in the middle of a pilot.
I don't see any issue with that. Does anybody have any other comments? Otherwise, we'll move to vote on that. All right, does somebody want to make a motion to approve or?
If I want to add something,
No, if we're gonna just see if we want to support this additional line. Does anybody wanna make a
Motion to
motion?
approve.
Approve, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you, Barrett. Todd, yes.
So again, you'll have to forgive me, but I'm just looking, housing and security. Was there something in here about making all efforts to encourage the use of vacant commercial properties changing to residential? Is that in your scheme? Because that was, our district has lots of Class C commercial space that, you've read in the papers, I'm sure you're aware of this, is prime space to be converted. If the zoning is changed and if there are proper incentives in place. So something, just a broad statement that option should be looked at and all effort made to pursue that where possible.
Can you give me the wording for that? Just
So where possible, the city should make reasonable efforts to change appropriate zoning laws and add reasonable incentives to encourage the conversion of commercial space to potential residential where feasible.
Is this different than the city of Yes
Yeah.
concerns?
It is, well, the city of Yes mentioned it, but I don't know that they put it in those terms. I'm just quoting from our own very lengthy and detailed resolution just passed at our last meeting. Quote, exploring adaptive reuse of vacant commercial properties to increase the supply of housing while revitalizing underutilized spaces in Midtown. So that's something that's happening all over the country. It happens some places in New York City. It's worth a mention in this section.
But I believe that was covered in the city of Yes, if you're talking about office space.
Yeah,
It's already in place, so.
I just have to say that I would say, I speak on behalf of the board, but I'd say that this is somewhat. It's a little broad. In other words, in our board, the idea of this conversion to residential is extraordinarily impactful. And I think there are commercial areas, particularly on the ground floor, you certainly don't. So I'm not comfortable personally on behalf of our board, I guess, which I sit here today to agree to that language. I don't know if there's something.
Would you suggest narrowing the language?
I'm not sure how that would sound or what it would be. Years here, but I know that we could not vote that. And then our board actually, I'm sure you know, so.
Yeah, I think we agreed on making it, a board that supports all Manhattans rather than specific community board.
I might also add, it seems like there's some trepidation and maybe some conversations that this should go back to the boards too, if they want to support something. This specific, so. But I'm happy to move forward if somebody wants to put that forward and vote on it. Does somebody want to make a motion to introduce that?
Well, I'll make a motion if there's a second, but I understand there's no support for it at this time.
Is there a second? Seeing no seconds, motion fails. Thank you, I appreciate that, Todd. Does anybody have anything else that they wanted to add to the housing section? I think we're ready to move on then. So the next section is specific on funding repairs and maintenance at NYCHA. Does anybody have any notes, comments, or amendments that they wanted to propose?
Sorry, I was gonna say, I know we have a whole section on climate, but and I'll triple check now, but I don't think we talk about the climate mitigation efforts at NYCHA, which across the city are necessary. So I think in that third paragraph, Where we talk about like accessibility and safety improvements, we can just add including climate. I don't know the terminology, but let's just say like climate mitigation or climate related improvements. Climate change.
Okay, so adding in a section here on this third line.
Literally comma, like 3 words.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
And, yeah, and resiliency.
Yeah,
I would
I
say.
love that.
Yeah, okay. Does anybody have any other comments about that one before? Does anybody want to make a motion to? See a motion?
Motion with the amendment.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Are there any no's? Abstentions? All right, so we will add that in. Thank you, Kathy. Are there any other comments for funding, repairs and maintenance for NYCHA?
Can, in this second paragraph where it talks about half of the budget being funded by the federal budget. So it says the city must make a plan to ensure that NYCHA residents' safety, habitability and affordability are not compromised. I feel like given everything that we should say something like the city and New York State should ensure that there's, not that it's not compromised, that adequate reserves are put in place to maintain the capital budget. Not, I mean, compromise
You're
doesn't seem
also-
to be the right word there.
You're also adding end state.
Yes, it should be a city and state responsibility.
I don't see any issue with that. Does anybody want to discuss that further? Otherwise, I'm happy to take that to a vote. Does anybody want to make a motion? Second, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, thank you, Valerie. Yeah,
For the third paragraph, I think it might make sense to address the ongoing challenges that NYCHA, health impacting challenges that NYCHA faces around lead and mold remediation. So maybe just adding a sentence at the end of that paragraph. Additionally, mold and lead in NYCHA developments continue to pose serious threats to the health of both adult and children residents in the affected units. The city must prioritize the completion of lead remediation throughout NYCHA's portfolio and addressing and quickly correcting the causes of mold infiltration in affected units
In a timely manner.
in a timely manner.
Thanks, Barry. I don't see any issue with that. Does anybody have any other concerns about that? Otherwise, I'll take that to a vote.
I love that. Motion to.
Okay, so the motion here, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Great, we'll add that in. Thank you, Pat. Any last comments here before we move on? All right, we'll move down to climate resiliency. Are there any notes or amendments that folks wanted to bring up in this section? Yes.
I have a few, one from Tammy on the last, following, 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph. I think she just wants to add and dramatically increase parks capital funding to support, and she wants to add the word parks improvements, but I'm not sure. She says, please amend the title to include parks improvements, so it reflects the full content of the last paragraph. So
so-
maybe she means investing in climate resilient. I'm not sure. Is anyone following that?
I think you're right. I think she means invest in climate resiliency and parks improvements.
Yeah. Thank
Here at
you.
the title.
I just was reading this for the first time this morning. Okay, so that's one.
Okay,
We voting on each
Um,
one or, yeah,
yeah, so since we're covering climate resiliency and we're also talking about parks as a part of that. I don't see any issue with that. Does anybody? Motion,
Second.
second, all in favor? Any opposed? Abstaining? So we'll do that. And sorry, I think you had another one or two.
I had, yeah, just a couple. I chaired the Environmental Protection Committee with oversight over the peninsula, so there's a few, but just. And I'm not sure how to most efficiently do this, but on the second paragraph, while government at all levels has been investing billions of dollars in coastal protection across the city, we must also ensure that the cities, you specify stormwater management systems, but I think generally green infrastructure, including stormwater management, might be something that we should highlight, just because Manhattan has no green
So
infrastructure
sure that the
projects
city's
right now. And this is a DEP funded item. but-
infrastructure, including stormwater, okay.
Yeah, but then the problem is that then you go into detail about in some cases, over 100 years old. I think you can do it that way. That makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you. This is helpful. Okay, so that's one. Are we?
Yeah, so just adding in green infrastructure ahead of stormwater. Will we think that specificity requires a vote, or would that be a friendly amendment? It's a friendly amendment. Okay,
Who's putting forth the?
Sure.
It has to be voted on it.
yeah, okay, happy to take a vote then. Anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? We'll make that change as well.
I'm sorry, one more. This is on behalf of Tammy. She feels that the heat mitigation should be highlighted in terms of sort of reducing the amount of hard surface in the city. It's a very good point. So I'm trying to find a place for it. And here I wonder if the second sentence of the third paragraph, to address heat and other climate risks, the city budget should commit to the use of resilient materials, particularly on roadways and sidewalks, and funding to the Million More Trees Initiative. I don't know where else to put it, but the basic point is to have funding for allowing roadways and sidewalks to be using, for example, the new asphalt that's been created. It's quite expensive, but that is much more resilient than what's currently being used, that the DOT should have a better kit of parts, tools to, sort of start to really look at green infrastructure more carefully. So that was my suggestion, is just to use resilient materials.
So we'll add in
Roadways and
resilient
sidewalks.
material, okay. Does anybody have any questions or concerns before we move that to a vote? All right, can I get a motion?
Just
Oh, sorry.
That goes in line with one of the things that I'm gonna ask. Is this an appropriate time to mention that? Sort of along the same lines.
Sure.
Okay, so again, I'm quoting from our detailed budgetary comment that we just came up with. Budget does not allocate funding for bioswales, permeable surfaces, or increased tree planting in areas of highest pedestrian traffic. So basically, one of the things that's come up in our next committee is the use of these specialized surfaces, permeable surfaces that can be used in the parts of the street and elsewhere in the parks that allow the water to go through. So I'm all in favor of that. Maybe we can broaden it to specifically mention.
Yeah, I think that is actually a good point. If you added at the green infrastructure specifying, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but what those.
Todd Shapiro,
yeah,
C5.
What he's just mentioned, the rain garden, permeable surfaces. the broad-
Bioswales,
yeah.
permeable surfaces, increase tree planting in areas of high pedestrian traffic. I mean, we mentioned specific places in our district, but this is really applicable across the city.
Yeah, I think as it's
I
a
don't think we
commitment to the
even need
million
to
more.
say in pedestrian traffic, it's for every traffic triangle in New York City. If we just planted more trees and had resilient materials, it would be better.
Yeah, I
That's
think
not
without that portion,
Yeah.
it goes into the Million More Trees initiative overall, so.
And I would add rain gardens to your list. Addition to bioswales.
So I'm all in favor of that.
Was everyone able to follow that amendment? Okay, are there any other comments? Otherwise, I'll take a motion.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any noes?
I'm in
Abstain?
favor.
Abstentions? All right, we will add that in as well. Yeah.
And we had asked for an amendment that is actually pretty specific, but I think it could be broadened to taking a look at the disruptive urban highways that negatively impact Manhattan's coastline. And it would, looking at a more environmental and resilient way to deal with these highways so that we have better access to our waterfront.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments before we move forward with that?
Where are you gonna put that?
In the same section.
Okay.
I will take a motion. Someone has one?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, we'll add that in as well. Yeah, Todd.
Okay, so on the environmental front, the other thing, which I don't think I saw mentioned, was, this was something that was really strongly supported. The lack of funding or mention or a climate resiliency study to assess the long-term impacts of extreme weather, flooding, and urban heat on our transportation infrastructure. So in other words, having the big picture data, that's something that we as community boards can never really do. We don't have the funding personnel. I think it would be great if the borough president's office would go on record specifically, not me, but on board, to make some mention of that.
Are there any questions or comments about that?
Isn't that done by the Regional Transit Planning Association as well as the MTA and New York City Transit?
If it is, we haven't really seen it, or, again, I'm speaking for our BEX committee, they felt that what was in place wasn't adequate.
Doesn't this more belong under the transportation and public realm section?
Possibly. But I think we certainly go here, it's really arguably
Can you repeat what it is exactly?
lack of funding for climate resiliency study to assess long-term impacts of extreme weather, flooding, and urban heat on our transportation infrastructure. So it's really broader. It's including those three different areas. It's really a broad scope environmental impact study on climate change. So what's the title? Investing in Climate Resiliency. I think is the section we're talking about now.
Mhm.
It seems like it could go there.
We are pretty invested, I mean, not necessarily entirely, but there is a lot. Maybe just kind of.
This is calling for a specific study, right? So that's what came out of our deliberations.
Now, I was gonna say, I don't know if it's DEP, but they're doing a flooding study that's like our district because and I don't know how broad it is, but I think it's in specific districts with around flooding specifically. We have like sensors or something like that. And so they have sensors all over the place, basically reviewing that. So I mean, I understand where you're going. I think it's just there are studies taking place, they're fragmented, but they're happening. So I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know in terms of like for this year's fiscal budget, if it's necessary to put that there, maybe something around the overview of like general like commitment to it. But I don't know if that's a budget request per se, because I think, yeah, I know that they're happening. It's just kind of like where, like we don't have like a director of how many studies are happening. So
Well, I think hearing all that, if you want to bring forward that motion, I'm happy to see how folks want to vote on it.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion.
Is there anybody that would like to second that motion?
Motion to support the priority of funding for a climate resiliency study to assess long-term impacts of weather, flooding, and urban heat on our transportation infrastructure.
I don't see a second on that motion, so I don't think it'll carry. So, thank you though.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
For just those in the second line of the third paragraph, the first "do" should be deleted. Because it says then with roughly 350 New Yorkers dying prematurely in the third paragraph, yeah, the first one on that line should come out. But my question is, what does it mean that the city budget should commit to the Million More Trees initiative? Is it better to say that they should fully fund it? Or, I mean, I can commit to anything without giving any money to it.
So your opinion is to change commit to fully fund?
Yeah,
Just like we did for the.
because this is the
parks.
budget, right? And we're saying address it. That would be my change there.
They don't currently fund Million More Trees Initiative?
Well,
Would
Well,
be
I think
continued,
you're
no,
saying
no,
the
I
ask
agree
is
with
to
you, I just
fully
think.
fund.
yeah,
continue
my
to
ask
fund.
is to do it all now.
Yeah.
I mean, the planting of trees has been the one thing to have shown to have
Yeah.
just an immediate effect on climate change. And so why put in 100 trees a year, commit and do it, just do it. And it has it beyond even climate change, just changes the whole streetscape. I mean,
Any
The motion
question?
is to change commit to fully fund.
Yes.
I'll put forward that motion.
No, second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? All right, we'll make that change. Thank you, Valerie. Anything else in the climate resiliency before we move on? Okay. So transportation and public realm. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to put forth here? Yes,
Yes, we go here.
of course.
Well, I'm just gonna read you what you read. Under transportation, CB1 is advocating for mopeds and electric vehicles to be registered at the state DOT level. This raises questions about why we are focusing for resources on the city level for registration instead of prioritizing the establishment of infrastructure and regulations that encourage and support enforcement. I'm not sure. Is there an amendment here?
Yeah, I saw that note when Tammy sent it. Is he more of a comment than a?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Mhm.
So she isn't really offering up a. Okay, well. That,
You can throw some language general in there about.
You're already in.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, we already.
You can include some in public safety, but you can add some.
okay,
It says should prioritize investments in environment and
And
enforcement and ensuring every moped is properly registered.
again, I get, maybe this is because I'm a lawyer, but when you say expand our bus lanes, do you mean increase the number of bus lanes? I don't know that making them any wider would have a difference.
So expand the amount.
Well,
Of bus lanes?
just increase the number.
It is vague. It
Yeah.
is vague.
I would say that's friendly.
Okay, strictly switching out,
Yeah.
expanding, so
It's
increasing.
clarification, it's not really.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, I would just say it's not the best word to ask for.
From expand to increase the number of.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
thing, we just passed a resolution, urging DOT to put in what's formally known as protected turn phase signals, but to make, left turns safer for pedestrians. So that the walk sign for a pedestrian is still a red light for the car who's turning. So that may be a too specific thing, but to, I think stressing that we would like DOT to address dangerous intersections something might in fact be general enough. I'm not sure where it goes. But just that kind of approach.
So maybe in the first paragraph towards the end, having some sort of additionally as it relates to pedestrian safety. And then
Right.
have that language in there.
Yeah. And addressing particularly dangerous intersections.
Not hearing any questions about that, so I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Any second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No, but I'm gonna abstain from this paragraph. Because I don't think my board has ever considered the streets master plan, so I can't say that the city has to fully fund it without knowing exactly what it is and what effect it has on CBA.
Well, the plan doesn't actually appear to have much specificity in it, looking at it. You know, it
Well,
talks
I
about
just-
process, it talks about priorities and goals, but it's not like, you know, they identify certain areas for pedestrian depth and bus
I
movement.
know, well, then
improvement,
I certainly am not gonna commit to agree to fully fund a plan that isn't really thought out. So I would make a substitute motion that that paragraph come out. Based on what. is being
What if you
said.
took away the street master plan and you fully funded the
DOT
DOT
separate
to
to
achieve these things?
Yes,
Well, where are the milestones? I don't think we've ever seen them.
well, why don't you just get rid of most of that first line? And say, adequate funds to ensure DOT is able to.
Achieve important milestones.
Achieve bike and pedestrian safety,
and-
bus improvement.
Yes,
Well, I guess I would be in favor of saying the city must fully fund the billions of dollars worth of street improvement projects that have been proposed, because those they're already out there, so. I'm not interested in
Okay.
giving blank checks, but
all right.
Especially not the DOT.
yes, exactly.
Okay, so the motion is essentially to truncate this paragraph and essentially remove the streets master plan portion.
Yeah,
And skip right to the city must fully fund that $1 billion worth of street improvement projects.
But maybe include still the list of bike and
Yeah,
pedestrian safety
yeah,
bus improvements.
yeah, as one of the
Et
projects, I
cetera.
guess, yeah.
So
Yeah.
just somehow get that into that second sentence if you're erasing the first one.
So can we move that section to after the line about the $1 billion worth, such as these projects?
Yes,
That
it does.
include
Okay,
bike safety.
so remove streets master plan portion. Make the city run into the $1 billion worth of street improvement projects, and then we will say such as, and then list out the.
I'd
bike and
like to
pedestrian
have
safety.
also one other thing, this is my own thing, but
Well, I
I'm
just want to make sure.
oh, yeah, okay,
because
but
this is.
it's related to
It's
this. so I
fine.
don't
Oh, it's
know if you're-
related. So,
Yeah,
okay,
sorry,
go ahead.
it's related in that there's no mention of money for the analysis and enforcement of sidewalk and roadway applications and, sidewalk and roadway. Yeah, I mean, the sidewalk and roadway cafes, there's absolutely nothing in there about that. So I would
That's a good point.
definitely put that, because God knows we need more
Add
money.
that
as
to
we
the
know for-
list of things. that
Yeah,
they should-
add that to
Yeah.
the list of things.
I don't hear any issue with that, yeah.
So I just want to add my voice to that, right? The need for enforcement to make sure that the nature that the kinds of furniture that are used and the placement and storage is actually enforced is a big issue in our district. And that should be specific.
So it'd be funding for the analysis and enforcement of, the analysis of the applications and enforcement of the sidewalk and roadway. Because one of the things we hear is that that the DOT doesn't have enough personnel to really review these applications, and so we get these unbelievably incomplete applications that they've approved that have no basis in reality as to how far something is from a fire hydrant or a subway entrance, et cetera. So there's got to be, more people looking at this.
And I might add that our own due diligence teams are having to do that work
No, I know.
and kick it back
Absolutely.
to the DOT.
And,
right.
and this was supposed to be something that putting all of enforcement and regulation under one agency, DOT, was resolved.
They
Well,
picked the wrong agent.
If I may.
Yes, they
We need to fund it.
If I may,
We need to fund it.
if I may, this is a feature, not a bug, at least in the eyes of some. Because the idea was to limit the administrative drag on the actual establishments to complete these applications. Right? They didn't want to throw up red flags by having, or slow down the process by having architects' plans and, keep it simple. Right? So, but that doesn't help us in doing our job.
We could go into a long discussion
Yeah,
on that.
I know.
Just adding
I don't wanna get too
Right.
far away, because I know that we added a few things to this amendment too, so while it's still fresh in our brains. Does anybody wanna put a motion forward?
So move.
Second,
Second.
What exactly are we moving on?
That was
Um,
Getting rid of the first sentence
yeah,
and adding back in the list of,
Of issues.
Issues
Of
that we-
specifics,
And including-
adding
The
And
analysis and
funding for
enforcement.
for street.
For DOT.
Okay,
yeah.
for, I'm for it.
Funding for DOT to include the analysis.
Right.
So there was a motion already put forward and a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, so that moves forward. Todd, did you have one more?
Yeah, so one of the things that came up in discussion about the bike safety is obviously an increase in funding, which is mentioned broadly here. But the idea that the general public has no sense that the enforcement is being made, they don't know where to look to the enforcement. So is it possible we could just add a few words there that say there should be funding for dedicated bike safety, traffic enforcement? Because that's something, it's almost like the police or the traffic officers they don't look to enforce it, but speed violations or hazardous operation by the bike. So, more, officers that would do this specifically.
So it's a funding question on additional resources, on
hiring staff.
hiring.
Just adding something to specifically mention the additional funding for dedicated traffic, what we have in our own thing, we said dedicated traffic and bike law enforcement officers. Right, specifically mentioned.
We're not gonna vote on that. I mean, I don't have the authority to vote on that. I would just say. One of the things we've been talking about is that the traffic component of the police force has not kept up with the evolving nature of the different types of transportation. And so they have no authority to even give a bike a ticket. They are clearly just focused, and their parameters are just cars. And they don't have any other, their duties have not been evaluated to do that. So rather, in our opinion, rather than hiring a new and dedicated force would be to, and I don't think this is maybe a budgetary thing, would be to reevaluate what the duties are of actually traffic police. Because they're not even under the auspices of the individual precincts.
I would argue that unless the funding is, you're right. It's the enforcement capability that they have is looking backwards and not evolving to the new needs. Whether it be street side cafes or e-bikes, but unless we prod them, and of course, what they would say is we have to make decisions about allocating our resources. And they view cars as a bigger threat than bikes, but that's not
Anymore.
if we don't specifically mention it and build out their enforcement capability, they always have an excuse. I mean, and that's the pushback we get when we talk to the people in our precinct.
And I say our board could not possibly support this, so I'm afraid
Yeah,
it would need more discussion.
what I'm sensing here too is like, I get that your board has had this conversation and made a vote on it, but it looks like some others haven't.
Correct.
And they probably need the opportunity to have that discussion before they could be on board with that.
Understood.
But if you want to make a motion,
I will defer. everybody should have a chance to.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else before we move on from transportation? Yeah.
I don't know, again, with this, the sidewalk and roadway cafes, but just that third paragraph. Administration must take to ensure that all users of the streetscape feel safe, particularly as e-bikes and mopeds become a piece of public form of transportation. And is it worthy there to say, and the addition of sidewalk and roadway cafes, beds are added, or is that not
Well, we just added it to the.
into the other, I know,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean. It's odd. There twice.
I'm sure that it needs to be there twice, but if anyone has any comments on it.
Where are we? So I'm sorry, under public safety, third paragraph, just the first sentence, it says e-bikes, in most cases, administration must take steps to ensure that all users of the streetscape feel safe, particularly as e-bikes and mopeds become increasingly popular form of transportation and sidewalk and roadway cafes are introduced. I don't know. Just seems like it allows for that.
Wait a minute, did we skip
You're
over cafes?
jumping kind
Yeah,
of
we
ahead
were-
there.
No, we're still on transportation.
Safety, we're still on transportation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm not-
Yeah, my God. I'm
I'm like,
so sorry.
do you have a different draft than I do? I'm sorry.
I'm really sorry.
That's okay.
No, we're just
Okay,
about
I'm
to go
so
into
sorry. Sorry.
cannabis, unless, I think we're done
Okay.
with transportation, so.
That's okay.
We'll go into cannabis and then.
Sorry,
public
sorry,
safety.
sorry.
Any comments or amendments as it relates to the section on cannabis?
How much time do you have?
Yeah, Sandy.
We said that now that, illegal cannabis shops are being closed, that we'd like OCM to focus on the actual implementation of registering licenses and making sure that they're following the prescribed rules that have been set. So we've gone past the first phase. We now actually need to make sure that people aren't abusing the system.
Oh, we still got plenty of illegals.
Well, we've got the illegals and now we've got the illegal licenses and the multiple licenses and
What about the new rules that just came out last week?
yeah.
Oh, they did. I haven't noticed.
They
I
came
was gonna
out.
say which one.
I do think though that the cannabis paragraph right now is well scoped to the funding questions for the city. I know that OCM has a lot of problems, but they are state, right?
Yeah.
I think the biggest problems are with the state, I think, and
Yes.
the organization.
So we as the city want the state to clarify the rules and implement the latest series of bills. I'm not sure what it would call that, but that they have just recently.
I just don't think that it fits in the budget letter response.
Yeah,
for
it
the
seems
city.
more of like, like more regulatory than budget.
Yeah, I just want to add that I believe what has been said, where our community board is reviewing in detail our previous proposals based on everything that's happened in the last year. And one thing is enforcement. So what you have here, and I don't agree. I think that it is budgetary, right? They have to cough up the money. The city has to cough up the money for more enforcement officers across multiple agencies to hold the illegal places to account.
That's the only thing in the paragraph, right?
I know, I agree with it.
Mhm.
The only thing I might add is what there is sentiment among our cannabis oriented committee that, the actual scope and mechanism of the regulatory schema as it exists places the decision making too far away from our boards. This is something that we mentioned, when the laws were being drafted, and we're seeing that play out. The effect of that is that there's just not enough funding or officers to deal with the flaws in the law.
So the request is for what then, for more, Funding
I'm happy
for-
with it the way it is.
Okay.
It says pretty much that we need more funding. It's fine.
any other comments before we move over to public safety? We'll move down to public safety now. Is there anything that folks want to see added, amended here?
Well, that was the one I
Mhm.
put forth in the third paragraph. Sorry, I had put those together with transportation. They're similar.
And can you remind us again? what
Sure.
that is?
Sorry. Again, apologies for going out of order. It's third paragraph, the administration must also take steps to ensure that all users of the streetscape feel safe, particularly as e-bikes and mopeds become an increasingly popular form of transportation, and the addition of sidewalk and roadway bed cafes are introduced.
Anybody, you make a motion?
So the motion is made.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
We're gonna abstain from that third paragraph.
Okay. Any other abstentions? Okay, we'll make that note. Anything else for this section?
Oh, Tammy had one, sorry.
Mhm.
The current wording of this section seems to elevate cyclists over pedestrians. Given the pedestrians are the most vulnerable group, I recommend revising the last sentence to, we must also ensure that adequate space is provided for pedestrians as well as cyclists and e-bike riders, and take stronger measures to prevent cyclists from using the sidewalks.
I'm not sure how that is a budget question, but it seems more like a policy, but I'm happy to
Yeah, that's good.
hear more about that. And sorry, Susan and
Maybe
then,
mine is also policy, but in a broader sense that we are acknowledging that there is now multiple uses that our streets are being put to, and that it's not just about cyclists or riders. We put we're always talking about other ways to use our streets. And that, you know, if we're talking about safety and fairness of use, it's like we, you know, the language should reflect that there are multi-uses, some of which may not yet be on the table.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I mean, that's
Maybe
why-
it's policy, but I'm just, you know, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, we're also talking about putting, you know, waste receptacles out there. We're talking about, you know, outdoor dining out there. So it's,
Truck loading zones.
so
pedestrian loading
we
zones.
have a new micro hub program that's going on, you know, it's all these things.
I also,
sorry, I just want
I'm
to see
sorry.
if that was, if it was a policy.
I don't know, I'm saying is that I just, if do people feel that that language out there is adequate, or is it, should we be, you know?
Yeah, maybe we just say the administration must also take steps to ensure that all users of the streetscape feel safe, period.
That we can go with. That's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
Or if at the end of that sentence, particularly as e-bikes and mopeds become an increasingly popular form of transportation, and the threat they pose to pedestrians and other users grows, or is that too strong?
That's not what we're talking
Okay.
about, that we're talking about alternate uses of the streets.
Yeah.
Well, then particularly is with the addition of many alternate uses
There are
of the space and
which are
then
competing, you know.
competing, right, and I think you could identify them.
So maybe at the end of the line, as well as additional uses.
I think that's broad enough. We don't want to go.
Yeah, it should be
Okay.
broad and
Yeah.
should be, you know, perspective.
Well, we just added the comment that I had suggested at the end of that sentence, so.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's
Taking
just a
it out.
different- Oh, you're taking it out, okay,
Yeah.
great, I mean, I just,
Yeah, I
What's
think
this-
that's what the proposal.
so what the sentence now says,
So that, yeah, basically taking out that the specifics of some
E-bikes and
it's
mopeds.
safety for users in what multiple, you know.
With multiple computing uses.
With multiple computing uses, yeah,
and not identified.
and not
uses.
specifically separating out just cyclists because.
No, I mean, not
So at the
identifying
end of
in parentheses many
streetscape
of
feel
these
safe.
uses, no, just leaving it as.
So we'll add that in after streetscape feel safe. And then,
I think so.
okay. And then end the sentence there.
And we're in.
Okay, is there a motion?
Yeah, and that's my motion.
Is there a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstain? Thank you.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
let's
let's-
do the second sentence.
Um. I mean, that then becomes probably the more specific piece, but not all-inclusive piece that the first one is, right?
What I've shifted now, just taking notes, and you all tell me if this sounds right. We must ensure that there is adequate space for pedestrians on our sidewalks, as well as space for cycles and e-bike riders, and we must take stronger steps to keep cyclists off the sidewalk.
We were eliminating.
We're taking that entire.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, no, real simple, in the second sentence around hate crimes, because we talk about religion and race, but we don't talk about gender, so just add trans.
Gender and disability?
Yeah, we can.
Thank you.
Um, I'll take that up if somebody wants to, before a motion. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? Thank you, guys.
Can I also, sorry, can I also add, because didn't see it, and this comes up specifically in my district, and I'm sure across all the city, about the lights. The lights, sometimes, they're not working, sometimes they're broken, sometimes, it takes a lot from us as public servants to go into our community boards, to, to go into the committee of public safety, and then bring it up there, and then, it goes up the ladder. How about just ensuring that all the lights are working, that there's some type of accountability and reliability when it comes to like ensuring that these
Are we talking about
lights.
streetlights?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So maybe it's that third paragraph.
Yeah, that administration. Yeah.
Additionally, basic investments in maintaining
Yes.
conditions for safety in our streets must be maintained, particularly funding or including DOT's
Here we go again.
budget for, or in DOT's maintenance of and replacement of broken street lamps and lighting.
Right, but ensuring also that there is not just a one time, like, okay, this is working, I'm good,
That's policy. We were asking for funding. I really think that's policy.
Yeah, to ensure that funding is allocated to keep the streets
Just like
light.
So
maintain
maintain-
adequate
To maintain the-
lighting,
Maintaining
street and
adequacy.
sidewalk lighting.
Yes,
Because that's one of the big issues in our
Yes.
neighborhood,
mine too.
because de Blasio put in really crappy lights.
I'm going to
Motion to
move.
accept.
Motion.
Maybe you want to add park
Second.
also,
Sorry?
sidewalk,
And
street and
parks.
park.
Yeah, across,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, motion seconded,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining?
I have one more thing under public safety.
Yeah,
So I don't know how much support there would be, but obviously CB5 has a huge number of bars, restaurants, and after-hours establishments. I don't see under public safety that there's anything there that calls attention to enhanced enforcement for nightlife. Unless I missed it somewhere, maybe it's someplace else.
Enforcement of like noise complaints or
Well, nightlife in particular, what we're seeing in our district is a lot of the bars and restaurants that are open in late hours, there's just not enough officers on the beat to deal with situations. The ones that they have are often overstretched or not there. It might be worth mentioning that just a word or two in terms of additional funding is a priority for them. When we reach out to the precinct, they often comment they have limited resources. That may be something that, I don't know how, specific that is to a lot of the other community boards, it's certainly important to ours.
How would we word that?
I would simply add, just looking at this public safety. That all users of the streetscape, let's see. When you talk about the streetscape, you know, we could add a sentence there that, you know, the use of the streets and the sidewalks in districts with abundant nightlife should have appropriate police security and staffing to deal, you know, to deal with the issues there, something to that effect.
This paragraph on public safety talks about the use of the streetscape. But what I think we're kind of all avoiding the issue of what we're saying here, which is, and what we've put in our specific budget district needs, talk about hiring more crossing guards. But public safety includes, when we start off the paragraph, we talk about the section rather, while some important safety measures have improved, rates of larceny and shoplifting continue to plague Manhattan. We don't say that we need more police officers. So there has to be more funding in the budget for our police force. I mean, you're talking about a night force. We're talking about a day force, at least in our community. We're missing like the key to public safety here, which is how many police officers do we have on our streets and sidewalks? They're to enforce everything. I mean, you know, when we go to our precinct every day or every week rather, I mean, that's the number one thing. There's not enough.
They're
police.
understaffed.
They're understaffed.
Right.
They're
Significantly.
And each new task put before them reduces everything else.
Right,
It's forced to
exactly.
prioritize.
They put them in the subways,
Right.
we don't have them on the streets.
Exactly. That's what the latest thing
Right.
is when we go to say.
So maybe just a simple sentence saying, making sure that there are increases so that sufficient numbers of
Yeah. I mean, you can
officers can be hired to.
take the last paragraph on crossing guards and just change it to police officers for the most part.
And leave the crossing guards in.
No, I mean, copy it and just put it, we have a specific paragraph on alarming shortage of crossing guards. We were talking about in our community board the other night about there's an alarming shortage of police officers because they're being spread so thin, at least in our district.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, I can't speak to your other ones.
You know, as the district that has the United Nations.
That we have all our police officers.
Abundance of police officers.
Yeah.
So I really feel that it's a thoughtful distribution of our police officers. I mean, I can't imagine how much overtime we're paying to have 50 police officers stand at the corner of First and Borough.
Right, well, during, you know, UN week, all our guys are in
down with us.
CB6.
And it's nice, but we don't need it. I mean, and so
Well, it isn't just the
So it
distribution.
seems like it's a conversation about distribution and adequate staffing versus additional.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think
I
that's,
disagree with that. Jessica Tisch has just come out about how many people are entering into the police academy and that we're not paying the police officers enough money to attract, you know, new police officers. And we haven't, you know, we've just lost through retirement almost 4 or 5 officers in our precinct. I mean, maybe that's not, maybe that's unique, but.
I think this is slightly more complicated because while the NYPD's actual budget has usually grown or been protected over the past couple of years, the regular police force headcount is apparently at its lowest level since the 90s, but police overtime is massive. So it would make more sense to focus on filling those empty slots and then spending less time making the officers who do have to do overtime.
I know, but we have an entire public safety paragraph that's related to a budget. That's 90%, in my opinion, policy, and we're not talking about funding of any enforcement.
So maybe the second paragraph, we say, we also ensure that NYPD is providing community strategies. this will require funding to restore the number of, I don't know what the term is for non-civilian police officers, but you know, whatever that term is.
Patrol strength is the phrase. you're looking for.
Uniformed officers
It's patrol strength.
to a level that matches level, pick a year, like 2015, 17, whatever, and reduces the need for overtime, period.
And why don't we say address? We address funding. So it's not that we need more funding, maybe we need more funding, but maybe we need a better allocation.
It says here you're funding outreach teams and subway safety measures. So I'm not sure you're asking for funding in the paragraph. Maybe it needs to be highlighted in a different paragraph, but it does say that.
I was gonna just say, similar to the other points, I don't know if all the boards have voted or like have resolutions to that point, because speaking for our board, like, yes, we have half the cops that we do, but we also have severe issues with our precincts, and I, in good consciousness, I can't vote for something like that in terms of bringing in new cops who can't even work in the first place, and be responsive, so yeah, that one's a little, yeah, I can't bring in something new that our board has, doesn't have consensus on. In terms of new cops, yeah.
I'm open
Okay.
at this point to seeing if you feel like there's a motion that you want to move forward.
Can I jump in? I had my hand up, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay, sorry. As we were talking, and we're talking about more officers, I don't know if I can in good conscience also say that that's the issue. I think that no discussion of mental health, I have heard no discussion about mental health services in regards to public safety, which I find to be completely linked. I think that we are spreading our officers thin, and a lot of it has to do with mental health issues. I'm seeing that all across the subway. We talk about in our district, at least, we have a lot of mental health issues that the police officers are responding to. And I just see that I think that there needs to be, in regards to public safety, some mention of mental health or specialists that need to be sent more. There needs to be an increase of those people who service people with mental health issues in our community, especially in my community board.
Yeah, I would also add that the section on mental health is just coming up next for
Oh,
healthcare.
okay. The other part that I wanted to add a little about public safety was about the electronic bikes and mopeds and those things. I see that we mentioned in regards to where they should. I feel like we're focused on as far as them being in the streets, and Is there anything mentioning charging stations or adequate education of where they can be charged? Because I know we've had lots of fires because of that in my community district. So if there's something in regards to maybe about charging stations, or I think that's a public safety issue, especially in my community board.
That's a great one, Marquise. I know, like, we have the highest fires across the Manhattan, I think, or the city, I forget. I know obviously that's specific to Uptown, but the lithium fires is like everywhere.
No, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's on the subway.
So I second that, or I guess I put the motion.
Well, I don't want to get away from the initial motion if somebody had a motion that they wanted to bring up first on the officer question.
Well, I have perhaps a suggestion that will address both Marquise's issues and the question about budget for NYPD. Would a piece calling on the city to fund the expansion of the Be Heard response program work? That's the mental health response unit that is being rolled out in pieces, much like Right to Counsel was, and would relieve some of the burden on the NYPD, but also is really meant to address the root issues of a person in emotional distress.
You're asking for funding for this program?
This program already exists, but I think it's only in 4 community districts.
Yeah,
Is that right? Yeah,
It's an arm.
right. But it's not 24 hours and it's not citywide.
I don't know anything about the program really or its results. I mean, I've heard of it, but I don't know how it's doing or its results. I mean, I guess if I can speak on behalf of the board that hasn't reviewed that, I don't know, is that, I'm sure. I'm not sure.
What's the name of the program?
Be Heard Behavioral Health Emergency something response, something.
It's been piloted, the program has been piloted only in certain communities, and the goal of it is to have mental health specialists obviously respond rather than having, police officers who aren't appropriately trained, responding to a mental health.
Behavioral
First
Health
name
Emergency Assistance Response Division.
Do we have any data yet? Is it so new that it's not?
No, there's some data, because this is the third or fourth
Yeah,
year
I think
of
it's a
the
third,
expansion pilot.
2021.
Could we, since a lot of folks aren't familiar, like, are we okay keeping it broad, like saying to continue to fund pilot programming, expand pilot programs?
Yeah.
That's important.
Around severe mental illness with mental health professionals and healthcare workers.
I'm really open to innovative ideas.
Are we on? We're on the healthcare.
No, we're
No,
still
we're-
finishing public safety. This
But
is,
This is
this
public
was,
safety.
the police are overstretched, they have to respond too much. Well, part of the problem, reason they're overstretched is because they're responding to more mental health calls. And this might address both of those concerns at the same time, but not when.
And so police cannot do anything anyways when it comes to a person in distress,
Yes.
other than call the ambulance, God forbid something.
And
May
there's so
I
much,
just-
so much frustration about the police being used inappropriately instead of having outreach from social service providers. They're being misused or, diverted.
I just want to be mindful of time. We still have about 10 more of these to get through. So if there's a motion that someone wants to bring forth, happy to hear. And Sandy, if you had something.
Well, I was gonna say the motion that I thought was positive was that we look to funding more pilot programs that, address police use within the city. Something very important.
I couldn't hear what you said, I'm sorry.
Sorry, we're asking for funding for more policies, what do we call it? They're pilot policies that are being developed to utilize our
To
police force
address
efficiently
emotion.
throughout the city.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
That looked vague to me,
I know, because we haven't decided, so I'm trying to.
like specifically to like mental health.
Well, it's not only mental
We
health,
can't
it's
vote on
over
that.
time,
Yeah,
it's how
exploring
they answer
pilots.
news. There are many issues. So I was trying to.
I like the idea of trying to highlight efficiency rather than additional.
Right.
I think that is a political hot potato, so I think,
I like efficiently better.
or whatever the word was, to address.
Yeah, efficiency of current.
Efficiency and use of our police system throughout the city.
Okay, there's a motion, seconds.
Second.
Anyone want to vote? Yes?
Aye.
Okay, any no's? Abstentions?
And I would just make some of this could just be a little tighter, like, it's just sort of editing stuff, but the second paragraph is long and large and doesn't, but when you do that, you lose a little bit of the importance of the last sentence in that paragraph, which is the administration must ensure NYPD is prioritizing community policies rather than we must also ensure you lose it. So I just would highlight that as a separate paragraph, but that's
Got
an
it.
editing thing anyway.
Is there anything else before we move on to healthcare?
Yeah, Tammy had one on crossing guards. She asked that we revise the final line of the crossing guard paragraph. The mayor and New York City Council would increase the assigned hours per week, introduce benefits and secure additional funding to attract applicants and enable the hiring of more crossing guards.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any no's? Abstains? All right. We'll move down now to healthcare action.
What I've just, the mopeds and the e-bikes, we talked about on the sidewalks, but I was saying that there's no discussion of like proper charging or anything like that where we've seen fires happening in at least uptown districts. So I'm thinking maybe if we could add some type of language to provide, I don't know, more charging spaces or something of that type for those type of at least we have issues up there. A part of our advocacy has been for educating the community about that and having public places that are safe for charging of e-bikes and mopeds.
Any questions or concerns about that, or does somebody want to issue a motion? See a motion?
The wording is provide funding for charging stations and
To make recharging safe. Available.
right.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
Yeah, we'll abstain because we haven't.
No problem. Thanks, Martins.
Mhm.
All right, moving on to healthcare access. Does anybody want to address anything in our healthcare access section?
One item in the final paragraph, about the broken mental health system. The psychiatric beds is one piece of it, but it's also the shortage of psychiatrists, and mental health professionals who can, evaluate, homeless. Because right now it's just psychiatrists and there's a bill in Albany that addresses that.
The next line talks about building and expanding access and funding. Sorry, where is it? Yeah, connected services and well-funded peer-led mental health programs. So we added something here where on top of the services, we're also talking about as well as funding for more
Mental health professionals, yeah.
Okay.
We have behavioral health professionals.
It's the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, well then just forget it.
Okay. Anything else on healthcare?
Oh, you need an and between prevent and reverse in that first paragraph. The city must do a better job of working to prevent, reverse the closure, prevent and reverse.
Got it. Okay, we can make that. All right, I'm going to move ahead. We have a section here about support for asylum seekers. Any comments or notes there?
I just don't, in the first paragraph, this housing sentence here. What is the point of that? I think it kind of takes away from the support for asylum seekers. I mean, we're already talking about in the first housing insecurity. I mean,
So removing
well, I'm just trying to.
I'm sorry, where you want?
this
the-
line here.
it's the
We must also
last
continue to
sentence of
push
that.
for aggressive investment in housing.
Yeah, it seems to connect that to asylum seekers as a problem in terms of. I mean, we have a shortage of housing for everybody that we've addressed in the housing section, so I don't know.
Is there a
It adds
motion?
anything and it's a little you don't want to build housing specifically. for
Yeah, I
violence.
think we get a lot.
Something that divides people.
Yeah,
Yes.
So do we want to put forth a motion to remove this line from? it?
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Is there a
second it.
All in favor?
Wait, we're getting rid of the entire thing?
No,
No,
the
no.
last line.
The last
Must
sentence.
also continue
Yeah.
from there on.
Oh,
There's a line specifically about investments in housing.
why is
In this
that?
section.
And it was questioned,
Yes, I
who said
agree.
that.
So it was there was a motion and it was seconded, so take a vote. All in favor? All opposed or any opposed?
So can I just get clarification? I'm sorry, is this, that we don't want our asylum seekers to obtain housing?
No, this is just because since, my understanding is because it's already been addressed right at the top when we talked about how there is a need for housing,
Right.
like across the board. Having a second section that's talking about housing just for asylum seekers seems a little kind of doubling up
Okay.
unnecessarily. That's my take on it. All right, so we'll make that change. Happy to move on.
Can I,
Yeah,
Eric, I'm sorry to do this, but I forgot something on the mental health, so I can just go back one, and I'm sorry about that, but in the last paragraph, we don't talk at all about, most of the city's jails are comprised of mostly people with mental health challenges. And given that we're investing $15.7 billion in new jails, 3.7 billion in Manhattan, for the Manhattan Detention Center, I think we should add that somehow in those programs, there should be a lot of introduction of mental health and mental health belts. And in order to do that, I'm just suggesting that in the last sentence, or the second to last sentence, while the city and state are committed to reopening badly needed psychiatric beds closed during the pandemic, the city must ensure New York get connected to service and supports well-funded mental health projects, including in the existing and proposed new jails. Getting at Rikers Island and the proposed new Borough-based jail.
That's right.
No, that's good.
That's good with that. Okay.
motion seconds.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. Moving down now to sanitation. Does anyone have anything related to sanitation here?
Yeah, in the third line, it says exasperated, but I think it means exacerbated.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know, again, this is maybe just a little picky, but we expect not only our street to be clean, but our sidewalk to be clean.
Yeah, I mean, but that comes in the manner of finding property owners. So if you're advocating for that,
As a matter of DSNY versus.
yeah,
Yeah.
then that's the route it takes when you increase sidewalk cleaning is,
Well, they walk around and give fines, so,
right,
but that's the fundamental operation of DSNY, so.
So change for streets and sidewalks.
small businesses, residents, workers, tourists, like all expect our streets and sidewalks.
Tammy had one other here. Could we include a mention of graffiti cleanup here? There's a need for a coordinated working group with the DOT to address the increasing issue of graffiti on light poles, street crossing poles, mailboxes, garbage cans, scaffolding, and other fixtures across the city.
Yes, I second that. The graffiti is just out of control.
Scaffolding's not a city, if it's privately
Yeah,
owned, the city
good
doesn't.
point. So maybe we don't, yeah.
Did I hear graffiti mentioned?
Yes.
Do you want it specific to graffiti then?
What?
The city only cleans up graffiti on city-owned
Property, right?
Otherwise, it's privately.
So I guess she's asking for another sentence that would say, the city must fund operations to clean up the graffiti on light poles, street crossing poles, mailboxes, and garbage and sanitation cans or garbage cans and other city-owned fixtures, I don't know, something like that.
I must say, we've had very good graffiti cleanup in our district, so it's not an issue for us. The city has done it.
Right. I
Maybe
think
you're
the
not
issue-
approaching the right person, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, this is her suggestion, I think we do.
Yeah, but I like it because it makes it across the city, not specific, community boards. I like that.
The only other thing I would say, this is probably when we get to parks, right? I know that the parks, not the big ones, not our headliner parks, but the smaller parks are just, since about 5 or 6 years ago, the graffiti has exploded.
So to edge that park still is,
Yeah, take out scaffolding and
put in parks.
Yeah,
So funding for removal of graffiti on light poles, street crossing poles. City owned fixtures, including light poles, street crossing poles, mailboxes, garbage cans, park fixtures,
and parks.
and park fixtures.
Okay, somebody want to make that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain?
I had one where the first sentence where it says the city must better fund the fundamental operations of DSNY. This would be, I don't know how to say it, well, including funding the appropriate number of waste baskets per district. That should not have to come out of a council member's discretionary budget and then have to be labeled, this trash can brought to you by council member so-and-so.
So maybe
I
waste
mean,
basket provision and collection is a fundamental responsibility. In terms of language, just that second sentence, waste basket collection, waste basket provision and collection.
I would just say including the full funding of the appropriate number of waste baskets in each neighborhood.
So maybe just to tie them both, just to keep it brief then, like, waste basket allocation or distribution
I mean, when I,
varies
yeah,
term and then collection. Is there a preference for that?
That's the,
well, I'm making the motion if somebody wants to second it.
Anybody want a second?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly what the motion is.
Yeah.
Just
The motion
allocation,
is
distribution and collection.
including the,
This section here,
yeah.
so it would be waste basket
Waste is a
allocation.
fundamental responsibility of the city and should be fully funded by the DSNY budget without the necessity of supplemental sources. If you want to include e.g. out of the council member's discretionary
Or
budget.
It's do it right.
Well, it shouldn't have to be.
Again, unfortunately.
But it
never
takes it
talked about it.
away from them doing
okay.
it too.
It's getting too specific for me to
But
support.
again, you're right.
Yeah.
Actually, it does.
If it were just a more general allocation and provision of that.
Okay, let's,
I could do it. I
all right,
can
that's
do it.
fine. Something's better than nothing.
So there was a motion, is there a second? So,
I'll second.
what was
I can
Oh,
second that,
exactly.
yeah. For the general.
for your motion? So just so we're clear, we're voting on the language that you just
Could you
proposed?
repeat the language?
Just to say waste basket allocation, distribution and collection is a fundamental.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Very straightforward.
Right.
So is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained? Okay,
just one thing, Eric, on the funding, I'm not sure who funds the removal of graffiti. I think it's DOT. I think DOT handles the graffitis. According to Tammy, I
It
just don't.
depends where it is.
Right.
The police have actually come and taken graffiti
Yeah.
off.
Okay, so
With
that's an
mailboxes,
example. I
it's
guess I
federal,
just would
like-
not specify DSNY for that particular line item
Right.
on the graffiti. That's all.
okay. Gonna move to the next section then. For older New Yorkers, is there anything here that should be added?
You've got a period where you need a comma, but otherwise, I don't. So, case management period, elder reviews should be case management, comma, elder reviews.
Got it.
Tammy asked for the possibility of adding the need to support the creation of more naturally occurring retirement communities, works, and dedicated sites for older
I-
residents.
So maybe we must
Yeah.
adequately identify and resource norms.
So look at already in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Well,
yeah, it's adequate resource NORCs.
Oh.
So it's about resources for existing NORCs, but Tammy's saying identifying.
Creation of
the
more.
cre-
So she's asking to add creation, resource norcs.
So adequately resource and increase the number of,
Fine.
or identify and increase the
Identify,
number?
Fine.
Identifying them as they occur. I mean, this is a dynamic
Right.
process.
Yeah.
And neighborhoods have aging populations over
Identify
time.
the
And at
need
least-
for.
And
And
identify
at
the
least
need for,
now,
yeah.
get federal funding for.
Right, you don't want to freeze it in time.
Yeah, so adequately resource NORCs and identify new NORCs.
Okay, is there a motion?
Okay.
Second.
Sorry, did you have a?
No, I just wanted to like see if there's any possibility of adding a language where it says including language access and technology support.
I want to get through this amendment
Okay,
first, if that's okay.
okay, yeah.
So there was a second, is there a vote, all in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we'll make that change, Rosa.
Yes, so I wanted to see if there's any possibility in any of these paragraphs to also add language access and technology support. We've seen a lot of elderly that are excluded just because they don't speak the language and also because they are not tech savvy.
So maybe add that to the
list of,
meal
yeah.
case management, reviews programs, language access programs, technology. Assistance and more, yeah.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, we'll make that change too.
Thank you.
Anything else before we move on?
I think that last sentence, it says everyone who qualifies should be enrolled and there's a period there.
Yeah.
Okay, you got that one?
Yeah,
I
okay.
thought you were talking about that. Okay.
This is on education and youth programming.
Why, I have a couple
Okay.
to start with, one that might not be easy. And just the second or third paragraph there about after-school programs. I think we should, between the social emotional learning sentence and the we must distribute after school speed sentence, I think we should add a sentence. Recent state cuts to after school programs have reduced our nonprofit institutions' ability to provide critical programming to our young people. Or yeah,
Critical and reliable.
critical and reliable, yeah. Because I know those cuts hit uptown very hard.
Does anybody want to move forward with that motion?
Yes, motion.
Second?
Second, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Barry, you said you had another one?
This is a little more nebulous, though. We don't talk much about school capital improvements, but which are pretty dramatically needed, both just because they are, but also because there are significant issues with school overcrowding and classroom overcrowding. And I think it would make sense to address that either in that first one sentence paragraph or after the social work and psychologist mentions. I don't know where that goes best, but.
Anyone want to move forward with that?
Yes.
So,
And sorry, it's just like a one line that school infrastructure,
like if we did it in the
funding
first,
for school infrastructure changes, maybe to address sustainability issues as well, because that's a huge.
Well, there's the class size mandate.
yeah, so in that first, maybe if we were doing it in the first paragraph, I would say. This begins with having adequate or having safe and adequate is the wrong word, but adequate
Accountable.
school facilities that can meet the new needs of higher tech classroom instruction, reduce school overcrowding present in Manhattan, and reduce class sizes or reduce class overcrowding in line with new guidance on class size maxima.
Sounds like you need new configurations. so that you have both in terms of meeting guidelines and meeting new technology requirements.
The problem is it's a Pandora's box because we can talk about the HVAC systems that don't work, the lack of libraries in violation of state law, the size, the school overcrowding despite SCA telling you that it's not there, like. There's so much to talk about, but if we want to keep it short, I would just call it school facilities and kind of refer to that.
So then just keep it
Can I
as school.
add something to that, the discussion? You mentioned technology in schools and that's obviously a need. I think we need to have the term career technical education as well included, as there is not enough dedication to career and technical education in our schools. And given the changes in that, we're looking at a different generation in regards to students who do not go to college or that don't necessarily think college may not be the absolute way. I think we need to have some type of advocacy for career and technical education programs somewhere around, maybe connected to that statement.
Maybe in the second paragraph. Additionally,
I will say we're getting a new STEAM center in Manhattan, which apparently addresses all Manhattan high schools. That's in our district, but it's not coming until 2030.
or where?
It's CB6.
New Steve.
STEAM, science, technology,
STEM, engineering,
STEAM.
engineering, art, and math. I know that because Keith Powers came to our meeting last night.
So I just
And I
want to,
remember all the.
I just want to see, are we gonna, is there a motion then? Based on what Barry shared that we'll move forward with?
And I've got to say, like, this class size is very controversial in our district because we have older buildings. People like going to those schools, so they're willing to deal with the overcrowding to have their child.
Yeah, but it's a mandate, it's mandated by law. It's not,
But it's still not.
But it's still a
No, I definitely understand. I was in the class size working group, so I definitely understand some of the details, especially when it comes to students in special education and how they're being left behind.
So all I'm saying is I would have to abstain, I believe.
Sure.
Well, I think that, it references classroom overcrowding, but addressing that via capital improvements sort of sidesteps the question about this mandate and the teacher ratio.
Yeah.
It's just calling about new facilities, not about
Right.
expenses.
In the broadest sense, are we talking about just compliance?
Mhm.
Whatever the specific rules are or mandates have been set out, in
Right.
each case, this is a
Parents
failure
do
to
not want
comply
compliance.
with what has been established.
Well, but
maybe,
HVAC compliance and library compliance are
They do
probably
want
more popular.
But there's a standard that's been set, there's a requirement that's set, and it's not being met. So it's a compliance.
I'm sorry,
The
I just,
library requirement hasn't been met for
1
50
second,
years.
I just want to get back to
Yeah.
getting a resolution on board because I don't want time to get away from us and I want to have time for a vote.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
So if there's a resolution or if there's an amendment that we want to put forward, please.
You had
do
a
so.
general statement on school
On school
infrastructure.
infrastructure.
and
Facilities,
capital
right,
budget.
right, capital projects for school infrastructure and facilities.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion?
and so do you mind just restating?
I don't know if I can get it word for word, but,
That's why we have these concepts.
I'm supporting our children.
Got here, adding a second sentence to the first sentence up. This begins with ensuring safe and well-maintained school facilities that will meet the needs for modern school instruction and reduce class size overcrowding. Robust capital funds required in every community school.
Yeah, I
That's
would,
fine.
And in compliance with,
No,
No.
that's not gonna.
I can't
that's
do
gonna-
that.
but that is the law though, that is the current.
I know.
Just saying.
But we're just asking for the funding for it.
Broadly,
We're
yes,
not,
yes.
we're not getting into,
Right.
What's the law?
Why, or
Let's keep our.
all right, is there a motion to approve
So
that?
second.
Second? All in favor?
Is it,
Yes.
is it possible to add something that talks about funding for adequate seats for early childhood education in each district?
That's good.
Yeah,
Because we keep asking for that and we keep
Yeah.
not getting, I mean, that's part of our,
That's currently the second paragraph. baseline these crucial programs and ensure that opportunities are available in every district that meet the need.
I kind of think that early childhood education seats are a little bit more specific. That paragraph.
And they're also frequently not DOE provided.
So
Right.
maybe the city must adequately fund
Private.
based on these programs, period, in particular,
Including.
early childhood. What's the last word? Early childhood something seats.
Early childhood seats. That's all that's what we just, expansion of early childhood seats in our
Should
district
be expanded to,
to meet the
Needs
needs
of
of
every
each,
district.
of each district.
that's where I would do it. And in the second paragraph.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Whether or not it complies with law.
I want to make sure that we.
Just kidding,
That we
sorry.
get through this as soon as possible, so we don't lose our fun here. Funding for nonprofits,
That looked good.
Fine.
any questions? Happy to move on. Staffing at city agencies,
That also looked good.
accessibility improvements, sorry.
I know we talk about the delays in providing funding for nonprofits in that section, but it isn't just that, it's all contracts are very, very slow to get reimbursed in the city.
So
So
having a
add something
line,
about,
having a similar line in
yes,
the nonprofit section, not just the education
Right.
section.
yeah,
Okay, I'll take a motion for that.
Yes.
Yes.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Any opposed? Abstaining?
Can we add one sentence at the end of staffing at city agencies?
Sure.
Particularly is the Department of Buildings, Housing Preservation Development, and then I don't know how you want to structure it, but then and Landmarks Preservation Commission. Which,
Yes.
you know, is significantly behind in their RFPs and permitting applications.
Okay, so just being able to add in LPC as another agency that we recognize has staffing
Yes,
shortages?
DOB, HPD,
Yeah,
LPC.
call them out. instead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any
your
motion for that?
motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? We were on.
What does that mean? I'm sorry, just language again. Can be extremely slow in closing badly needed affordable housing projects?
Like the actual
Financing.
financing and the closing of those projects?
Okay,
Closing deals.
isn't it in completing or finance? I mean, it's
Or does
almost
that
like,
mean bringing the process to the point where you get the construction going?
Exactly.
It's all the process, but until.
Like
you
all the
get
paperwork
shovel to
and
the
all
ground.
the.
Right, a real estate close.
Yeah, so it's a
All right.
property closing.
if you all know what it means, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's what I'm.
Yeah.
That's just, that's,
It is. Okay, I think you're right. In terms of how it could be phrased.
we have our section on community board support.
It's not long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this goes back to what we were just talking about before we started. We should explicitly mention the need for either funding or support for getting spaces adequate to the need of hybrid meetings and that are big enough to support the technology and the sound quality and the combination not only of our community board members, but of the general public.
So can we make that update here where we mention more funding for boards to allow them to hire additional staff as well as procure the technology and resources and adequate spaces?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
space.
Meeting.
facilities.
Adequate meeting spaces?
It seems that we don't have access to the same technical services that other city agencies do. And that we're treated differently and that we're expected to, shoulder this all, in the sense that if any other agency needed it, they would be allowed to hire staff or access it through OTC,
Well, that's part of the getting more funding for resources, right? So you can
I think that
Yeah.
But just, I'm thinking about mentioning, we have to be treated like any other agency. I don't know, maybe
there's no norm for other agencies. Everybody is,
okay.
you know. And
Trust me, you don't want DCAS negotiating.
Okay.
Do you guys best with them?
I know, that's the problem.
So sorry, just on the piece that we
Oh,
just
I see,
discussed
yeah.
about inadequate spacing, we do need to vote on that. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I,
Okay,
Do we
any
have language?
opposed? Yeah, it was adding after technology and resources and adequate space.
Fantastic.
Can we add something in there about just like even minimum, the lowest paid staffer in our offices should be making as much as somebody in a city council person's office? I mean,
No,
no,
because leave that to the discretion of the board. We don't have enough money, we don't have enough resources, we all
well,
agree
I
on
mean, we
that.
don't, okay, so what shouldn't we, how is that addressed?
By the board deciding how to spend its budget.
We allocate our
Every
money
board
differently
is
depending on the size
differently.
of our staff, and we don't all have the same amount of staff members. That's the issue.
And we don't all have the same amount of money.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
But that's part of the fact that whoever's
No, I-
negotiating our lease.
If you have a motion to bring forward.
Okay, well, nobody's gonna support it, so I think.
No, I think it's just to allow them to hire additional staff, well encompasses the and then the resources, like, I think we achieve that.
Do we need to be more explicit about the size of the spaces that we need, instead of just saying we need, space?
well, we could say that the
To-
1,500 square foot norm is not adequate for
Full board meetings.
a
Yeah.
full
Or
board
for
meeting
meetings.
And for public access.
Right.
and for public
To
access.
serve their districts and have meetings where the full board and public can attend and participate. After they need to serve their districts.
Do you want to go with that language then? Is that okay?
So no, we should phrase it as no less than 1,500.
No.
Not a number.
No, we said.
Adequate space for.
That's,
Yeah.
We need
Serve,
adequate space to have full board. meetings.
technology, resources, and space they need to serve their districts. And what did I say? Hold public hearings with the full board and.
To be able to
participation.
accommodate the full board and
Right.
and public access. Okay,
Well, it should say. It should be broad enough to encompass full board meetings, committee meetings, and,
Public hearings.
Well, if you can.
well, if the space can handle a full board, then it can handle a
board
committee. then.
members and the general public.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go with that language.
so moved.
Move second, all in favor?
I have one other comment.
And then just any opposed, any abstaining?
I have one other comment. It has to do with the technology, which I think was mentioned, right? The issue of how we vote and the electronic support and recording the votes, and there are software services that are perfect for that. I don't know, we just switched, it came up in conversation when I was here the last time. Is it, I mean, that's something that should be done on a citywide basis.
Well,
Is
not,
that caught up in what's in here?
well, I think just broadly, we have technology in here.
Right.
And then I think on top of that, other boards do it differently. Some have their own systems for their votes. Some prefer to not do.
We're not
kind of-
required to operate under a certain standard, so then you're taking away the board's choices.
Yeah,
about how
I
we
think
do
the
things.
language.
I think technology will
encompasses-
cover that.
I think
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Any other question on this before we move on?
For food insecurity, I would just add at the end, additional funding should be allocated for the Community Food Connection program that allows food pantries across our city to serve those New Yorkers who face acute food scarcity. however you want to phrase it, but just that program is the conduit by which city funds the food pantries. And it's still a desperate need.
Anyone want to take that one up?
Is the Fresh program another city program?
It's a property tax abatement for grocery stores in retail areas that meet the definition where the grocery store to bodega ratio is not high enough, meaning where there are food deserts without supermarkets. It incentivizes landlords to rent those spaces to supermarkets. And they made it, it used to be applied like zoning was on like a case by case basis. They recently reconfigured it so that it's just if the data supports that you should be eligible, you're eligible. There's no like vote by the city council to apply a fresh abatement or exemption.
So it's a tax abatement, but it is the city program. It's the city.
Yeah.
You're introducing another program that,
Yeah,
you know,
this
I
is.
had no idea.
Yeah,
what
this
it
is
was.
specific to food pantries,
The community food connection is the conduit that the city sends money for food pantries.
Does anybody want to bring forth that motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Okay, thanks, Barry. We'll move down to public restrooms.
Tammy had one suggestion. She said during a working group meeting, where President Levine participated in, which included representatives from various boards, there was a suggestion to allow the city to collaborate with multiple companies to install public restrooms rather than being restricted to a single provider. This approach would provide a broader range of options suitable for different neighborhoods.
So maybe
It's too specific.
Yeah, and I don't think we're there
Yeah,
yet either, it's the bigger part.
if you want like possible locations, parentheses, including public and private, and parentheses.
Okay.
It's not just a matter of bad public health policy, it's also a matter of equity. In the sense of people who can afford to go into a store and make a purchase will always have access to a bathroom.
Right.
And our lower income people may not be in that position. This is also, you know, who we are.
Yeah.
Sure.
So just in that, just a phrase, you know, bad public health policy and inequities, economic inequities, maybe something like that.
So I think there's two things. There was, Barry, what you were just referencing as an
That was
amendment.
just to encompass Tammy's sentiment. I don't know if we don't want to put it in, we don't have to. I'm not pushing it.
And then, so do you want to just make an amendment that we include embarrassment and bad public health policy and
Economic inequities.
And economic.
We want to address economic inequities.
economic inequities? Okay, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Okay. And then finally, we have funding the arts. Is there anything that we wanted to include in here? Doesn't look like there is. Great. That's the end of this year. I'd like to then call a vote on the entire resolution.
Can I?
Yeah, sorry.
Question?
Just a question on funding the arts, yeah.
Right, so, one thing that, yeah, maybe because we have parks of a certain type. Our board feels that specific note should be made of the large public art installations. That are made either, that are made in the parks, right, as something that is worth a, you know, specific mention.
In what way?
I could not vote for that because we never considered it.
Yeah, and there's nothing else that's specifically mentioned in the arts section.
Other than just general operating capital.
Yeah.
And the needs are so diverse, really, I think just. You know, what may be a public art installation in one district may be after school arts funding in another, maybe. You know,
If you have a motion that you want to bring forth and see how that goes, you're welcome to, but
here's the specific language, CB5 is disappointed. This was actually with regard to, the mayor's budget. CB5 is disappointed that the preliminary budget do not allocate funding for public art installations. Right, so in our context, those are the kind of things that you see in the various public plazas that are controlled by the Parks Department and some of the conservancies, putting incentives and supporting that, because that's added so much to so many parts of the city.
It seems very district specific, but I'm happy to take a motion and take a vote if folks want to.
Yeah, I would say that for us, we could never do this because we have a lot of people actually do not support some of these things that go into our public parks and feel that it compromises the experience of the parks. So it's a little bit controversial, so just don't have the CB1.
We haven't addressed it.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
I
You
just had a question, sorry, going back to education and youth programming, the paragraph that we have about libraries. It says that it brought back 7-day service, but we only have it in like one library in our district, just 7-day service in one library. And in fact, in response to the mayor's budget, we advocated for it at least moving around the community so that different parent, if you don't live closer to that library, you might have one. So I guess I'm just questioning.
Could we just expand 7-day service?
So
More locations.
To more locations
To more locations.
in each district, because I don't know about
more
your,
locations.
yeah.
To more locations. Okay. There's a
That's my
motion out there.
Second.
Second.
Yeah.
All right.
Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor? Opposed? Abstained?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. I think we'll just move on to a vote now. I'll do it roll call style. So CB1,
Yes.
CB2,
Yes.
CB3, CB4, CB5,
Yes.
CB6,
Yes.
CB7,
Yes.
CB8,
Yes.
CB9. Paris.
Yes.
CB10.
The Marquis drop. Yes.
Marquise is still on. I'll leave the vote open in case Marquise returns. CB11
Yes.
and CB12. Kathy had told me that they were yes on their way out. So the borough president is also a yes on this. So with that, this passes. We will be sending out the official language with all of the revisions. Just give us a little time to clean it up and we'll get it to you. But really just want to thank you for your patience with all of this. We know it's a lot, but it's an incredibly important step and one that borough president recognizes and respects from all of you. So thank you for this.
Do you want to go back to Marquise before?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it open, but Marquise, if you're there, I just got a message. If you want to submit your vote.
I move that we table chair reports until next month.
I was going to ask.
Give that motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
our board specifically asked me to ask something, and if I could, I'll be really quick. Just that we passed a resolution urging the New York State Legislature to amend the state constitution to reform the process for establishing legislative districts. And we're just wondering if any other boards were interested in taking that up as an issue. It's a 2-year process. We had mentioned it.
Can you send something around so?
Absolutely.
Yes,
That will help.
around.
And can I make just two quick things? We passed something supporting the health bill carried by Senator Hoyman-Sewell and Assemblyman Lasher. And it would be very helpful if more districts did this. This is called Harnessing Expertise of Licensed Professionals. It's to expand the range of mental health professionals who can actually do an examination of, and I'm happy to send around our
Yeah.
resolution.
Yeah.
But that really would be helpful to the legislature to get more board support. And finally, I know several districts have been in touch with Alex Bell around our voting system. He's getting ready to expand its use. And we'll be in touch soon. He is going to launch a way in which other districts can utilize his software.
Super.
But it may mean you have to sign up in a certain way, but it won't have a cost.
Okay. Can I just make one announcement?
Yeah.
March 12th, we have a very big ULURP coming up for the expansion of Lenox Hill Hospital. And if anyone is interested, you know, you might want to promote it in your own neighborhoods. You know, we have quite a few hospitals in our district. We're very hospital rich. Our community is very divided on the expansion of this hospital. And so we welcome voices from all across Manhattan and elsewhere to weigh in. If you'd like to join us. And we're doing the hearing in two parts. We're doing the presentation by Lenox Hill will be on March 12th. And the rest of the evening will be open for public comment. And then in our April land use meeting, we'll have that discussion for the board and have some resolution. I have no idea at this point what it's gonna be. Anyway, thank you.
So one quick.
Sorry, I just want to say,
Marquise?
Marquise returned and
Yes.
just recorded their vote in the chat. Thank you, Marquise.
Yes,
Appreciate
I
it.
vote yes. I'm sorry. I had to use the bathroom.
No worries. Great, thank you so much.
Just two quick things, if I may. On behalf of, I'm never here, I got a minute. Community Board One, just on the Link 5G towers, I don't know how many of you are involved in this, but if you could please remember to sign up as a consulting party and have as many people on your board copied and become a consulting party. What's happening, these things are a rash, it's terrible. You didn't even talk about that on our city side, 2-foot wide.
This is
32-foot poles for internet connection.
Oh, the poles.
The poles, and just
The
make sure
Wi-Fi.
that your board is signed up as a consulting person, a party
Or
with the
cable.
State
Sure.
Historic Preservation Office and City Bridge. Which is the company that puts those forth.
I will take a motion if folks want to
Adjourn.
keep
Motion.
chatting, motion to adjourn or.
Yeah, let me just get this in the record. I'm submitting CB5's detailed budget analysis as part of the meeting. It's
Thank you.
background to a lot of the things that we discussed.
I appreciate that. All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Yep.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.